Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Sarah, and today we are trying to do the video I attempted to film last week and ultimately was not able to, and that is my August wrap-up. Now, August was the month of the Newts readathon. I already made a wrap-up video for all the books I read specifically for that readathon. This is just everything else. It is mostly manga because I needed some smaller books in between all the big ones I was reading. I did read a couple of other traditional novels this month that just weren't for the readathon, so mostly this wrap-up is manga, but if you were looking for traditional novels, I put them at the beginning of the video. That way, everyone is satisfied. Just a quick little thing I need to address because I know I mentioned it kind of before in the last video, but here's the thing. I'm only posting on Fridays from now on. I might change that schedule again. I am just having such a hard time with college at the moment. Maybe my schedule will clear up, maybe it won't, but for now I just don't have the time to record 2 videos a week. It's just not possible for me, so hopefully in the future that might increase again, or it might decrease. I might have to post every other week as we get closer to finals, but hopefully that won't be the case. Just know for now you'll only see my face on Fridays unless you know me in real life. So with that all being said, let's dive on in. Now, the first book I read this month I actually DNF'd, and that is American Gods. I was listening to this on audiobook, and that was a mistake because there were a lot of sex scenes in this book, and I'm just not comfortable with sex scenes. Like, if it's in a book, I normally skim over it. But because this was an audiobook, it made it even weirder because, someone was reading this to you, and it was just awkward, and I was not comfortable. I was not having it. And I couldn't even, skip over it entirely because important things happened during the sex scene. And I'm like, I don't want to read this book because it's making me uncomfortable. It's a very interesting concept. All the religions and deities were brought over from the old world into the new world as people immigrated to America. We have Odin from Norse mythology, we have leprechauns from Irish mythology, we have Anubis from Egyptian mythology. They're all showing up in America. The problem is people have stopped worshipping them. More and more as America shifts more towards a technological advanced society, we are forgetting the olden days. Therefore, our new gods that we worship are no longer that of the old world. Instead, we have technology and the internet and TV and celebrities and beauty. That's a new American gods, and so this book focuses on the war between the old and the new. It's a very fascinating storyline, but one of my main problems is that the perspective character, I like perspective characters. I write in a perspective character. They're not the main character. They're not the focus of the story. They're just the person who we're hearing the story through. I love that idea. It was not really handled that delicately in this book. It was just he was there. He didn't really serve a purpose. He was working for Mr. Wednesday, who happens to be Odin, and he was just he's just the chauffeur. He's just there. Sure, his wife died and now is back to life for some reason, but it's not quite working. Having a perspective character is something I'm very used to, and having something that's done very well because it's something you see a lot in anime and manga. A lot of anime and manga follows a perspective character, someone to tell this magical story through a mundane eye. And I've seen it done so well before, and it wasn't handled well, and I think it was that and the sex scenes that really made me drop this book. So if I pick it up again, it's going to have to be physical. I just don't know if I'm ever going to pick it up again. That's my problem at the moment. I really don't know. The next novel I read was One of Us is Lying. I gave this book a 3 stars. This is sort of a mystery YA thriller. 5 kids go into detention and only 4 of them make it out alive. The book follows the story of the police and the school trying to investigate to figure out which one of these kids killed the other one. And the thing is, they all have motive. They all have beef with this guy. It's they all have very good reason to want this dude dead. And I enjoyed it. It wasn't the most amazing book in the world. It was a 3 stars. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I wouldn't say don't read this. It just kind of is. If you want to get into mystery thrillers, I think this might be a good starting point. It's fairly easy to understand. I don't try and solve my mystery thrillers. I like watching them play out. I like hearing all the thoughts and conspiracies going through characters' heads. I don't try and solve it. Therefore, I didn't predict the ending to this book because I wasn't trying. But I hear from a lot of people that this book was fairly easy to predict the ending of. So if that's what you're going for, maybe avoid this book, but it was a good book to listen to as I drive. And the last traditional novel I read in the month of August that I did read this for the readathon, but I didn't finish it in time to talk about it in my wrap-up because again I had to film my wrap-up early because everything was happening in the month of August for me, but that is Molokai. This book is just amazing. I gave it 5 stars. Like, I'm recommending it to all my friends. I have to give this copy to one of my friends soon, so I need to film this fairly quickly. But just this book is so beautiful and amazing. It follows the leprosy outbreak in Hawaii and all the damage that comes about it. Our main character Rachel was only 7 at the time she found leprosy on her leg. She was sent away to a quarantine island called Molokai, where you're expected to basically just die. No one is supposed to get off Molokai. Like, technically, you could maybe get it with experimental treatment, and if you go through 6 tests and every single time the bacteria in the leprosy comes out negative, it's not active, you might be able to qualify for a temporary leave from the island. But really, the whole thing about it is that Molokai is only 22 miles away from the main big island. But the surf there is so bad, even if you want to escape, you'll most likely die trying. This book takes place in such an interesting time period. A lot of you guys know that Hawaii used to be its own kingdom. It had its own king and queen. And during the time of the story, when Rachel was just 7, the king died. Technically, Hawaii was already a territory of the US during that time, but it was kind of working its own government. But once the king died, the US came in and shut down the queen from trying to regain any rights she had to her kingdom. And so this takes place during the shift of cultures, and then there's also World War II that's going on in it. You have World War II and the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which our main character lives in Hawaii and saw it happen. It's such a fascinating time period because our character lives fairly long life, and it's just watching. Again, she's on a quarantine island. She can't view the outside world. But every now and then, newspapers or technology comes in. They get to see moving pictures that soon become movies. And it's so fascinating because you get to see the leprosy outbreak. It's focused all on the disease, but it's also the life that the people on the quarantine island have to live. And I love it so much. It's 5 stars. It's been such a long time since I've read a 5-star book. And truly, this was just the best one to get back on. It was so good. I really did love it, you guys. Alright, so everything else I read for the rest of the month that were not part of my Newt's readathon were manga. So if you're not here to hear me talk about 2 series that I'm just in love with, you're allowed to leave. Goodbye. But I'm gonna gush about my current favorite manga, so that's probably going to take a little while. So for the month of August, I read volumes 1 through 10 of My Hero Academia. Volume 1 I read for the readathon, so I'm just going to hold it up while I talk about what the main plot of this series is about. In this book, 80% of the world's population has a superpower known as quirk, but our main character, Izuku Midoriya, was born without a quirk. He has no power whatsoever. Because so many people have such extreme superpowers, a lot of regulation is placed on the people. They can't really use their quirks in public. They don't want to risk causing damage. But even with that societal pressure to keep your quirk hidden to yourself, if you are born quirkless, your life is going to be a living hell, and our main character has to go through that. But despite all of this, he dreams of becoming a professional superhero. That is a job you can have in this universe, and he looks up to the world's greatest superhero, All Might. And one day, he meets All Might himself, and All Might actually suggests that you can take my power. You see, All Might has a very specific quirk called One for All, and he can actually pass on his superpower to the next generation. This has been a quirk that's been going on 8 different users. It is the only quirk like this in the world. And now Izuku Midoriya is the next person to hold this supreme power, and he gets to attend a high school training the next generation of superheroes. And it's so fascinating, and it's so cool, and I love the world building in this series. Like you guys, this series, there's so much world building and so much development. What happens when you suddenly gain a superpower? When 80% of the world suddenly has access to superpowers? The laws and the regulations and this technology, it's so amazing. And this takes place roughly 300 to 400 years in the future of our time. Superpowers are seen as the next evolution of humankind. And it's just, I love it so much. It's so cool. This series has so much hype behind it, and I was kind of hesitant going into it because I'm like, well, the fandom kind of has a bad reputation, and it's the most popular series right now, but it's so worth it. I know One Piece is the most popular manga in the world, but this right now is the most talked about, and I'm just in love with this series. It took me so long to get into it, and I'm so regretting that decision because it is so good. So Volume 1 follows a main character as he gets a superpower, starts training, and begins attending high school. Volume 2 is the beginning of training and the USJ arc. The USJ arc is when you first meet our actual villains. Sure, you have some rivals hitting up along the way, but Volume 2 is where you get to meet the bad guys. And it's so cool and fascinating because you get to see so much of the characters. And I'm going to keep talking because I have a lot to get through, but like, these two, like if you really want to get into the series, start with these. It really hits it off with a bang. Volume 3 is the end of the USJ arc and the beginning of the sports festival. The sports festival also follows into Volume 4 and I believe Volume 5. It's just the tournament where like all the kids get together and they have to fight to prove that they're worthy of becoming superheroes. There's no real consequences for losing, but if you win, you have a chance of getting an internship with an actual hero. These guys are freshmen in high school, and they are about to go experience what their job in the future is going to be like, and it's so cool. And it's like, I love tournament arcs, and the thing is, most of the time tournament arcs are really long and drawn out. This one is very condensed. Like, this series has a very fast pace to it, and it works with the series so well. Volume 5 is the end of the sports festival, and this one focuses a lot on one of the side characters known as Todoroki. Todoroki has a lot of backstory, especially involving his father and his father's relationship with All Might. So you get to see that play out as he fights against Izuku, who he sees as All Might's successor, and it's so cool, because there's a lot of side characters in this series, and they all get so much development, and I'm just in love with it. Volume 6 is the Stain arc. The Stain arc is right after the sports festival. It directly follows the consequences of certain characters' actions, and it's so fascinating. Like, you get to see their internship during this, and like what goes wrong is so fascinating. And again, a side character shines through as their main character's just there to play support. I love this so much. Like, the art in this volume is terrifying. Like, you get to see a new villain, and his design, it's so cool. Volume 7 is the beginning of the practical exams. You see, in Japan, they kind of start where our second semester would start, so halfway through the school year, they have summer break. And so that means they have their practical midterms at the end of the school year, like at the end of summer for us. And they have to fight against their teachers. Like, professional heroes, our main character and his rival have to team up and fight against All Might, the, greatest hero in the world, and they have to try and beat him for their test. And it's just of course, All Might gets handicapped, but our main character and his biggest rival, Katsuki Bakugo, those two do not get along. You do not put them in the same room together, and they have to fight together. And it's not only a test of how much they have learned, but it's also a test of how much they're willing to put up with each other, and are they willing to do teamwork in order to succeed in their exam. And it's so fascinating, and I love it. Volume 8 is the end of the practical exams and the beginning of summer camp. So, again, just because it's summer doesn't mean they're off in training. Being a superhero is a full-time job. So even during summer they have to go and train. It's only about a week-long event, but so much happens during that time. And this is just the beginning of it, and it's so cool. And again, a lot of side characters shine through. You get to see so many amazing battles. Because again, you have the end of the practical exam, so you get to see every student have their own fight, but then you also move into the training arc of them at the summer camp, and it's so cool, and I love it. Volume 9 continues on with the summer camp as things go wrong, and I cannot talk about what happens in this, but it's so good, and a very epic fight happens. Actually, a couple of really epic fights happen, so. Again, this is an action manga, but it's so good. And then Volume 10, I cannot say anything that happens in this volume. But this is the best volume. I love this volume. And I know I'm saying that a lot, because again, this is one of my new favorite series, but this one is just amazing. I love it so much, and God, so many things happen, and so much character development, and so much world building, and just so much happens. So much, you guys. And again, this is a very fast-paced manga, so you keep going through the arcs, but this one, it actually takes time to recognize the fact that there's actual consequences for their actions. And I love the world building, and I love the character development, and it's so cool. And so this is the last volume of My Hero I read during the month of August. I have since read the next 16, and I bought the next 4 because there's only 20 volumes out right now. And it's so good, you guys, but still, this is my favorite volume so far. Well, I mean, Volume 16 has my favorite character in it, and he has a moment, but this one, he's also in it, and his it's so cool. It's so cool. And the last manga I read in the month of August is Kaiju Hitman Reborn Volume 1. I finally bought Volume 1, you guys. For those of you who don't know, I've owned Volume 3. I've lost Volume 3, but this is still, like, I love this series. It's early 90s comedy. It's so good. It eventually moves into an action, but it's just, I love it so much, and I finally own Volume 1, and it's so good, you guys. So, Kaiju Hitman Reborn follows a main character, Suna. He's 14, living in Japan, just a civilian life. And then one day a baby shows up on his doorstep and says, I'm going to be your new home tutor. I'm training you to become the next mafia boss. You see, Suna is the only living heir to the world's greatest mafia, and he is not prepared for that. So the world's greatest hitman has shown up to be his home tutor, and he's just, it's chaos ensues. Again, this started off as a comedy, so a lot of the first couple volumes of this series focuses more around just learning some of the characters, seeing their hijinks, and then it moves into action as things get more serious, as storyline begins to develop, and you actually get to see, like, he doesn't want to be a mafia boss, but with the way things are going down, he keeps following that path, and he really, Suna is so sweet and innocent, he just wants to take care of his family. But the world is not letting him. So I've said this before, I don't rate manga. You have to say it completely off of my review. And I do this because a manga is an incomplete story. Like, each volume, it doesn't even have a full arc in it. Like, arcs, like what you might see in a traditional novel, is split up between separate volumes, because that's just the way the format laid out. And I love it so much, it just makes it hard to rate the manga. So I'm waiting till the series is finished, or I finish the series, but just go off of my word, these are all just great stories. So these are all the books and manga I've read during the month of August. Thank you guys all so much for watching and putting up with my slightly delayed video. I did not mean to put it off for a week. I filmed it and then the footage just, I've said this before, it's unusable. So here it is again. Now you get to see it this time. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you liked this video or liked any of the books / manga I've discussed, please leave that down in the comment section down below. And while there, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, good night, good evening, and good morning, everybody.